Tonight, the Prime Minister finally breaks his silence on two fronts.
We supported that aspect. That is not a blank check.
Mark Carney's shifting tone on Iran and how he's disputing a senior government official's assessment of Indian foreign interference. New strikes and clashing explanations.
I might have forced their hand.
How Donald Trump contradicted his own Secretary of State about why the U.S. went to war and what he's considering to get oil moving again through a critical waterway. And grieving a devastating bus crash in the Dominican Republic.
We just want him home, and my mom to come home, where she belongs.
Why a heartbroken Canadian family is fighting for answers.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening. A massive and desperate race to leave for tens of thousands stranded in the Middle East tonight, where tensions are soaring along with the unpredictability. Israel launching new strikes on Iran as that country continues to retaliate by targeting U.S. diplomatic buildings across the Middle East. One barrage striking near the American consulate in Dubai. And this warning at the American Embassy in Jordan. Also, for the first time since the conflict began, Mark Carney spoke about it today, recalibrating Canada's position after criticism his government's initial written statement did not address international law.
We condemn the strikes carried out by Iran on civilians and civilian infrastructure across the Middle East. And we implore all parties, including the United States and Israel, to respect the rules of international engagement.
CTV's Adrian Gobriel leads us off again from Turkey tonight as the civilian toll in the conflict mounts.
As the sun sets on day 4 of this war, the scale and scope is painfully coming into focus. South of Tehran, Israel struck this compound today belonging to the group responsible for electing Iran's next supreme leader. Throughout the night and into the day, Israeli forces have also been targeting Iranian-backed Hezbollah positions as the IDF confirmed they have sent additional troops into southern Lebanon. The Red Crescent says that more than 780 have died in Iran since the fighting began on Saturday, with the single biggest loss of life taking place here at this girls' school. Neither Israel nor the U.S. have claimed responsibility, though nearby fresh grave sites have been dug to bury dozens of children. The president of the Red Crescent in Iran saying that more than 168 children, aged 7, 8, and 9, were martyred.
The fear, the panic, the anxiety experienced by millions of people in the Middle East and beyond is palpable and was entirely avoidable.
10 countries across the region have been on the receiving end of airstrikes fired by Iran since the fighting began. Following an Iranian attack in Saudi Arabia, the U.S. have shuttered embassies in Riyadh, Kuwait, and Beirut. With Tehran under a daily, deadly bombardment, thousands of Iranians are trying to flee to neighboring countries.
Turkey is home to more than 120,000 Iranians, with many residing right here in Istanbul's historic quarter. But foreign nationals we spoke with at cafes in this neighborhood declined to speak on camera, still fearful of the reach of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard and anti-Iranian sentiment here in this country. So celebrations in your house last night.
Halit Yenejeh's wife is Iranian. The couple have been waiting for the decimation of the Islamic regime.
Islamic regime. For devil, for Persian people, we are happy, really happy. Devil's times finish.
Halit, what is your hope for the future?
We want good election, good rules election, and secular system for Iran.
As the flames of war fan out of control, any semblance of peace in the Middle East at this hour remains a distant hope.
Tonight, U.S. Central Command said they've hit 1,700 targets since their joint operation with Israel began. With Iran hitting back, this entire region has been thrown into a state of chaos. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Istanbul.
U.S. President Donald Trump defended U.S. military action in Iran today and appeared to contradict his own Secretary of State while explaining why it started. Here's CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbin.
In the Oval Office, the U.S. president says he just had a feeling that Iran was going to strike, but denies he was pulled into this war by Israel.
I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first.
Appearing to contradict his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio.
We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces.
The president who promised no more wars portrays this one as necessary to eliminate Iran's nuclear threat once and for all, destroying their naval and missile capabilities. And Trump says they knocked out Iran's radar defenses, hitting 1,700 targets so far.
We're hitting them very hard, and the big scale hitting goes now. They no longer have air protection. They no longer have any detection facilities at all left, and so they're gonna be in for a lot of hurt.
After wiping out Iran's top leadership, Trump has called for Iranians to rise up and take over their own country. And yes, Trump has thoughts about who he'd like to take over. The late Iran Shah's son, not his first choice.
I guess the worst case would be we do this and then somebody takes over who's as bad as the previous person, right? That could happen. I would like to see somebody in there that's going to bring it back for the people.
The president lashed out at Spain and the UK for their initial response to his war.
But this is not the age of Churchill. I will say the UK has been very, very uncooperative.
And as America's war widens, already claiming U.S. soldiers' lives, some lawmakers question the legal basis for Trump's war and will try to force a vote this week to limit the president's powers. Omar?
All right, Joy, thank you. Nearly 100,000 Canadians are in the region impacted by the war, and Ottawa has requested Oman for its airspace, if necessary, to bring those who are stranded home.
I was on the phone with foreign ministers of Gulf countries and Middle East countries all weekend, including Oman this morning, who they still have, or had at the time of my conversation with the foreign minister, have airspace that is still viable.
The Foreign Affairs Minister says Canada is making sure supports are available. The U.S. is securing military aircraft and charter flights for some of its citizens. Some international tourists stranded in the Middle East have started flying home on limited repatriation flights as hundreds of thousands race to get out. For the first time since the Prime Minister left on a three-country trade trip last Thursday, he finally took questions about Canada's position on Iran and on foreign interference from India, the first country on his itinerary. Mark Carney is now in Australia, and that is where we find CTV's Abigail Beeman tonight.
Good morning, Prime Minister. How are you? Canada's Prime Minister down under in his first media availability a week into his Indo-Pacific trip, asked about the U.S. and Israel's strikes in Iran.
Prima facie, it appears that these actions are inconsistent with international law.
Mark Carney said Canada supported the U.S.'s initial strike.
We supported that aspect. That is not a blank check.
And Canada backs efforts to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, a position he takes with regret, given this reality.
A nuclear bomb is a massive threat. It would be the biggest threat.
With a reminder international law binds, Carney called for a de-escalation and said Canada can help in that process. It was also the first time Carney weighed in since a government official suggested India was no longer involved in foreign interference in Canada.
I would not use those words. Okay.
He says the official involved won't face consequences and wouldn't explicitly say whether he believed India is still actively interfering.
There are aspects of those briefings that I can't share in public, and I'm not going to betray them. I will tell you that there is progress on these issues.
Carney said a wide range of countries continue to try and interfere from time to time, and Canada will continue to call them out when it happens. Omar?
Abigail Beeman in Sydney, where it is now Wednesday afternoon. Abigail, thank you. Canada's intelligence agency is warning of likely cyber attacks as an act of retaliation by Iran. The Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity states pro-Iran hacktivists will likely view Canada as a target due to Canada's public support of the U.S.-Israel military activity. But there are no confirmed attacks just yet. Donald Trump revealed the U.S. might deploy American military assets to escort commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, typically, a fifth of the world's oil travels through there, but the war has effectively brought tanker traffic to a halt, and that has caused the price of oil to spike and sent markets on a roller coaster. The TSX took a 756-point tumble, the Dow dropping more than 1,200 points after the opening bell, recovering but still closing down around 400. The Nasdaq dropped 232 points and the S&P 65. Here's CTV's senior political correspondent Mike Couture.
The joy that came with the opening bell quickly faded as the New York Stock Exchange dropped almost immediately. The TSX quickly followed suit as it lost nearly 1,000 basis points 5 minutes after the open. Monday stock markets opened down but did recover.
So I think there'll be some opportunities here for some of the potentially higher risk names that have got hit quite hard to potentially look at these as entry points to get back into them.
Traditional investment safe havens like gold and silver also dropped in value, just another sign of the high volatility.
The market is yo-yoing up and down. Just in the course of today, silver prices are down almost 10% intraday, but they're up significantly over the past couple months.
However, the price of oil continued to climb. Iran produces less than 5% of the global output, but the Middle Eastern country is cutting off access to the Strait of Hormuz. More than 20% of the world's oil goes through that maritime passage. It's led to a rise in the price of gas.
If we have a little high oil prices for a little while, but as soon as this ends, those prices are going to drop, I believe, lower than even before.
But this former CEO of the Alberta Petroleum Marketing Commission worries Trump's prediction could be wrong.
Iran has these drones, $20,000 drones, that seem to be able to shut down Qatar's LNG production, right? So if that's the case, then it'll be a long time before production returns.
If oil production continues to stall, some analysts worry the price could spike to $100 per barrel, a level the world hasn't seen since the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. Omar.
All right, Mike, thank you. BC's chief coroner revealed today there will be an inquest into last month's mass shooting in Tumbler Ridge, BC. One area of focus, how information is shared between online platforms and law enforcement. It's a critical question since OpenAI admitted it did not notify police of a concerning interaction on a ChatGPT account linked to the shooter. Word of the inquest coming just as the federal AI minister gets ready to meet with the CEO of the company, Sam Altman. Here's CTV's Judy Trin.
The BC coroner's inquest is aimed at answering how the Tumbler Ridge tragedy could have happened, beginning with access to mental health supports in rural communities.
We will employ all the skills that we have to investigate the circumstances of what happened, and if gender diversity was an issue and comes up as an issue in those circumstances, then it will be examined in a fulsome fashion.
The shooter, Jessie Van Rutselaar, was transitioning. She killed her mother and a half-brother at home, then 6 more people at a school before taking her own life. The inquest will look at why guns were returned to the family home, even though Van Rutselaar had been previously apprehended under the Mental Health Act. The shooter's use of AI will also be examined.
There are questions about how we could have prevented this. I believe that the people of Tumbler Ridge, the families, are owed an apology at a minimum from OpenAI.
OpenAI, the developer of ChatGPT, suspended Van Rutselaar's account for abuse, but she was able to create a second account. Police were not notified until after the mass shooting.
This is your opportunity to speak to Canadians, to speak to the families of Tumbler Ridge.
Thank you very much.
After senior officials failed to provide detailed answers last week, the Minister of Artificial Intelligence will meet with Sam Altman, OpenAI CEO, directly.
I want to know what changes they're going to make specifically to protect Canadians. These AI chatbots pose new challenges to us.
The chief executive of OpenAI will also meet with BC's Premier. David Eby says he wants an apology from the tech giant, and he also wants the federal government to put national safety standards in place on all AI companies. Omar.
All right, Judy, thank you. We are hearing tonight from the family of one of the 2 Canadians killed early Sunday while on vacation in the Dominican Republic. Amanda Fullerton's mother died on impact. Her father rushed to hospital. And adding to her anguish, she says, is a frustrating lack of communication. CTV's Danton Unger has her story.
And they don't seem to care that we've already lost her and we might lose him.
Amanda Fullerton's parents, John and Colleen, left for a vacation in the Dominican Republic Saturday. The next day, Amanda received an urgent text from her uncle, who was traveling with them.
In hospital, bad crash. And then he phoned and he said that all he knew was that my dad was covered in blood and my mother was unconscious.
Sunwing Vacation says on Sunday a bus transferring guests from Punta Cana International Airport to their hotels via their third-party provider Nexus Tours was involved in a crash that resulted in casualties. But in the aftermath, Amanda and her family says they didn't hear anything from the government, embassies, Sunwing, or Nexus Tours.
We found we found out our grandma had died via the news.
In their country.
In their country.
Even now, they say communication with the federal government and Sunwing has been limited as they're desperately waiting for any updates about their dad's condition. All they know is that he's in the ICU.
We've had no contact. We don't know what's going on. We know he needs spinal plasty surgery if he's stable enough, and we've heard nothing.
Global Affairs Canada tells CTV News it's aware of 2 Canadians who died in the crash, but would not confirm their identities. Canadian officials are providing consular assistance and are in contact with local authorities. Due to privacy considerations, no further information can be disclosed. Meanwhile, Sunwing Vacations tells CTV News we are in close contact with Nexus Tours as well as local authorities and are actively supporting impacted guests as well as anyone who may require assistance. But Amanda and her family want more than statements from Sunwing and the federal government as they work to get her father home alive and bring her mother's body back to Canada.
We just want him home and my mom to come home where she belongs.
Danton Unger, CTV News, Winnipeg.
Coming up, comparing fighter jets. How the Gripen stacks up against the F-35 as Canada decides on its next big purchase. We are getting a closer look at 2 different fighter jets on a NATO mission over Iceland. One of those warplanes could soon be added to Canada's fleet. Here's CTV's Geneviève Beauchemin.
On duty for NATO in Iceland, the Swedish Air Force showed off just how fast it can prepare its Gripen fighter jets for takeoff.
Our goal is to rearm, refuel, and do all the checks necessary to take off again in roughly 15 to 20 minutes on road basis.
Aircraft technician Sergeant Emil Lindgren says the made-in-Sweden jet is easy to maintain in the harsh climate of the north. That's part of the sales pitch from Swedish-based aerospace company Saab to land a deal to sell its Gripens to Canada.
We practice at home regularly in these conditions, so it's a match made in heaven, I think.
But Denmark, too, has deployed to the region. It flies the F-35s and says its advanced fighters also perform well in Iceland.
They are equipped well for this environment.
Canada has bought 16 of those jets and is now reviewing a deal to go with a full fleet or with a mixed fleet of F-35s and Gripens. Both fighters are serving in this highly strategic region as Sweden leads its first air patrol mission as a NATO member. Its mission comes at a critical time.
There's no sign of Russia scaling back on their Arctic ambitions.
Since Sweden's rotation began, there have been no Russian sightings, no incidents. But its deployment also comes in the wake of U.S. President Donald Trump's demands to acquire nearby Greenland.
I have to say, our relationship with the U.S. has been very good, and actually in the recent years it has deepened quite significantly.
But Iceland and its partners, now protecting its airspace, are training their sights on getting NATO allies to focus on common enemies.
No doubt this is all information Ottawa is analyzing as it makes its final decision on its fleet of fighter jets. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News at Keflavik Air Base in Iceland.
Still ahead. Which top Trump trade advisor is set to testify over alleged ties to Jeffrey Epstein? U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has agreed to testify before a congressional committee over his ties to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Lutnick acknowledged last month that he visited Epstein's island in 2012 but denied any wrongdoing. The announcement comes days after former U.S. President Bill Clinton and his wife, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, testified in the inquiry. Justin Timberlake is suing to block the release of police body cam footage from his drunk driving arrest. His lawyers argue it would subject him to public ridicule and harassment. The pop star pleaded guilty to impaired driving in 2024. Police say he ran a red light while driving in New York's affluent Hamptons region. And members of Iran's women's national soccer team refused to sing their country's national anthem before their first match since the war broke out at the Asian Cup. Iran lost to South Korea, but won over some fellow athletes online with their show of unity. Still ahead, why World Cup excitement is already reaching fever pitch in Toronto. It may still be more than 3 months away, but the excitement is building in Toronto as the city and its fans get ready to host the world's most watched sporting event, the FIFA World Cup. Here's CTV's Heather Wright.
The world is coming to Canada, with fans officially kicking off the 100-day countdown to the World Cup.
We have tickets for me and my family.
Antonio Aruz moved to Toronto 3 years ago and still can't believe he'll be able to cheer on his home country in his new city.
We received the notice that Panama will have 2 games here, so that's amazing.
In a city as diverse as Toronto, there are plenty of divided loyalties. Eugenio Pagnotta is half Brazilian, half Italian, born in Canada. He's rooting for Brazil, but thinks if Italy qualifies and plays Canada in its opening game, there will be a sea of Italian fans in the stands at BMO Field.
The dilemma there is interesting because Italy haven't qualified for the past 2 World Cups. If they qualify this time, BMO Field is probably going to be more blue than red.
Canada, the United States, and Mexico are hosting this year's World Cup, the first time it will be played in 3 countries and 3 time zones. Hundreds of thousands of fans are expected to descend on Toronto and Vancouver, where 13 games will be played. There has been plenty of criticism in the lead up to this tournament. Tickets have been hard to get and are expensive. Costs have soared, and there is increasing worry about political and security issues. But Canada Soccer CEO Kevin Blue says Canada is ready for the world and fans are in store for an amazing experience.
And I think it's going to, be somewhat breathtaking as far as how much of an impact this will have on the psyche of Canadians who are looking for Canada to do great things on the biggest global stage in sports.
And so, with 100 days to go, final preparations kick into high gear for the cities playing host and the team that will take to the field. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
And that's a snapshot of this Tuesday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night and see you tomorrow.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.